Singapore has branded itself as a beautiful garden city since 1967, but is this urbanized island nation truly clean and green? My name is Shuning, and we will be taking a closer look at how the climate crisis is unfolding in Singapore and what adaptation and mitigation policies the country has enacted to combat it. Singapore is responsible for a larger quantity of emissions than might be apparent at first glance. Its domestic emissions only contribute to 0.11% of all emissions worldwide. However, these numbers do not account for Singapore's trade and shipping activities. That is because, according to IPCC calculations, no country bears individual responsibility for emissions from shipping and trade, since they mostly occur over international waters. As a major importer, transport hub, and trading market, Singapore is part of the supply chain that contributes to the creation of greenhouse gases. Apart from our industries, land conversion from forests and other vegetated areas to settlements means that between 2012 and 2014, Singapore land went from being a net carbon absorber to a net emitter. With the loss of these natural carbon sinks, more heat-trapping carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. Being situated 1 degree above the equator, Singapore is extremely vulnerable to climate change. Today, the country is heating twice as fast as the rest of the world, a problem accelerated by the urban landscape. The maximum daily temperatures could reach up to 37 degrees Celsius by the year 2100. The health risks of increasing temperatures range from heat stroke to an increase in cases of dengue. Just this year, in 2020, Singapore has seen its worst dengue epidemic, with a total of 29 people dead from dengue this year. Another climate threat is sea level rise, as the island is less than 5 meters above mean sea level. Higher sea levels also coincide with more dangerous storms and increased rainfall. Singapore is predicted to be vulnerable to these extreme weather events as climate change exacerbates. The effects of sea level rise and rising temperatures pose an existential threat to the island nation. So what is Singapore doing about these threats? Singapore has already ratified several international agreements, including the Paris Agreement, but let us take a closer look at its adaptation and mitigation strategies. In terms of adaptation, the government's primary concern is with building coastal defenses against rising sea levels. The government recently announced the setup of a coastal and flood protection fund with an injection of $5 billion. In terms of mitigation, Singapore instituted a carbon tax that kicked in at the beginning of 2019 to support its emission reduction efforts. Under the Carbon Pricing Act, businesses that emit more than 25,000 tons of carbon dioxide or equivalent amounts of other greenhouse gases will have to pay $3.70 per ton of emissions. Apart from the carbon tax, the planning is less ambitious. Singapore's current plan to reduce emissions, unveiled along with the 2020 national budget, is not in line with the IPCC's recommendations to reach net zero by 2050. The international non-profit group Climate Action Tracker lists Singapore's climate plan as highly insufficient, meaning that the country's commitments fall outside the fair share range and are not at all consistent with holding warming to below 2 degrees Celsius, let alone with the Paris Agreement's stronger 1.5 degrees Celsius. Climate Action Tracker also points out that there are no plans to transition from natural gas to clean energy, while Singapore banks like DBS has continued to invest in coal power plants overseas. So what is holding Singapore back from establishing more ambitious climate actions? At COP24, Singapore's Minister for the Environment and Water Resources noted that Singapore has a scarcity of land that precludes the deployment of large-scale solar or wind farms, while busy sea lanes means that offshore wind or tidal energy developments are impossible. Moreover, Singapore is economically reliant on the refining and petrochemical sector, which is a large source of carbon emissions. Building on its position as a key regional port, the refining and petrochemical plants are part of a regional business supply network. Despite these limitations, Singapore can commit to more ambitious mitigation policies. For one, swiftly transitioning away from fossil fuels is key to reducing emissions. Some of the world's biggest corporate emitters have refineries in Singapore, particularly on the reclaimed petrochemical hub, Jurong Island. Even though Singapore might not be able to house enough solar panels to power the entire country, Singapore could tap on regional power grids to access energy that is cost competitive. Financing and support for renewable energy projects have seen a boom in recent years, even during the COVID-19 pandemic. Southeast Asia's rich renewable energy potential remains largely untapped, which means that there is a large potential for growth. This could be realized through bilateral cooperation or regional initiatives with Singapore's Southeast Asian neighbors. With more political commitment and increasing support from the public, Singapore can address the climate crisis. Every tiny fraction of a degree of warming, no matter how small, will be the difference between life and death for millions, if not billions around the world. And there is still time. Individually, we can start and continue to have conversations about sustainable practices and systems. Although individual action may not have a large impact, a larger movement against unsustainable actions can move corporations and governments towards more sustainable policies. Thank you.